So even before we go over any, let me remind you that cosine graphs end up on the x-axis or with an x orientation, a left and right layout, and sine graphs end up with a up and down orientation, or on the y-axis, or up and down kind of symmetry. So, having said that, let's sketch a few from worksheet 4. 1 through 8 all look like, no, that's not true. Never mind, let me just open it up. Are there ones you have questions on you would like to see? Well, then I'll just pick a few. Number 6, r equals -5. So radius is -5. So to me, that's the easiest kind, because it's like telling you what to graph. The radius is -5. So go out to 5 and draw a circle. That's a terrible circle, but you get the idea. Circle radius 5. Let's back up to number 5. Things are a little more interesting here. It's cosine, so I know it's going to be in the x direction. Is that a rose or a circle? It's kind of a trick question. It's a circle, but if you think it's a rose, how many petals does it have? 1. So you could have answered that question either way. It's a circle or it's a rose with 1 petal. It's a cosine circle, but it's negative. So what does the negative do? It moves it. And what does a negative always do? Don't say move to the left. How could you? What does a negative always do? Flip it. So we're going to flip it. So we want to be on the x-axis, but we want to flip it. 3, is that the radius? It's the diameter, so that's a little bit different. So we'll go out to 3. And there's our circle, or our 1-petaled rose. It's almost easier to think of it as a rose. That way there's less to have to think about. You don't even have to worry about circles. You just worry about roses. 7's a rose, but how many petals does number 7 have? 3 petals. It's cosine, so it's on the x-axis. So I know my first one is, my first petal's on the x-axis. I need 2 more, and they need to be equally spaced, so something like that. 3-petaled rose on the x-axis. How about number 8? How many petals does that one have? 8. And it's even, so there's 8 petals. It's sine, so they're not on any axis. If that's bothering you, here's how you can know that. What's the cosine of 0? What's the cosine of 0 equal to? 1. So if I plug in 0 back on this one, cosine of 0 is 1. Multiply it by -3. That means sort of my first point is angle 0, r -3. So my first point's over here. What's the sine of 0? 0. So my first point is at the pole, and then it goes out from there. So there's not a petal on the x-axis. So I just need 8 equally spaced petals, 2 per quadrant, hopefully equally spaced and equally sized. Again, I'm not going to take off. If yours looks like that, that's good enough. I'm not going to take off because that petal is skinny and that one's fat. It's good enough.
So on the back, number 22 and number 23, the petals they're like in the middle. And so.
On 22 and 23?
Yeah.
So let's see, 22 has 4 petals. So what was n?
2.
So n was 2. Is it a sine or a cosine graph?
Sine.
Sine, because it's not on the axis. So I know it's going to be sine of 2 theta. I just need to know how far out that is. Is that what you're asking? Like, how do I know the radius? I think for these, especially for ones where you can't tell exactly, I think you're just going to have to kind of eyeball it. And we're going to call that 3. Because it's definitely not 2, and it's not 4. And so assuming it's an integer, it's going to be 3. So that's a good question. That's a tricky one there. And same thing with 23. Same thing. Like, how wide is that? Or how long is each petal? Well, I'm thinking 4. Let's see. 8 petals means n is 4. So we'll go with that. Both of those are sines because they didn't have one on the x-axis. 21 and 24 have one on the x-axis, so those are going to be cosine roses. It's really fun in calculus, not even calculus 1, calculus BC, you can find the area of the petals. Like, I don't want to do that right now. No, we don't know how to do that yet. In fact, we don't even do that in calculus AB. So, any other questions on those? Again, cosine has a left-right orientation. Sine has an up and down orientation. That's maybe the most important thing to remember because that's going to carry over to today.